Hi, this is Robert Rickover, an Alexander Technique teacher in Omaha, Nebraska. My guest is Imogen Ragone, an Alexander Technique teacher in Wilmington, Delaware. And we're having a series of conversations about F. Matthias Alexander's view of concentration and how we got to the point where we were doing it. We've previously explained the two-step process that gets us there. Poor use leads to mind wandering, leads to concentration.
In FM's
FMs, all
model.
FMs, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So now I want to talk about that his remedy, which is what we need to do is improve the way improve the way we use ourselves, and to do that, we need to find someone who's an expert in helping people improve their use. Now, the first thing to say about that is this book was written in 1923. So if you were reading it and you thought, okay, I got to find myself such a person, um, well, one name jumps out right away, the author of the book.
Mhm.
We also know that his brother A.R. was teaching. We
Mhm.
also know that he had a number of people who he informally trained, people like Ethel Webb and Irene Tasker, and I think Margaret Goldie was probably in that group.
Mhm.
So there were
Mhm.
maybe half a dozen people there. So there were maybe 8 or 9 people in the
In the
whole
world.
world, all of them in London, England. So if you were reading this book anywhere else,
Mhm.
you were stopped right there,
Mhm.
unless you wanted to travel. Okay. But here's the question. Let's say you actually found such a teacher. Okay. And what is it that you would experience from that teacher? How would they teach you? What would they ask you to do? And hold on, I just want to find the appropriate. Uh,
And are we assuming when he says finding an expert in use of the self, or however he worded it,
yeah,
um, he, because I could see that there could be other experts in the use of the self who are not Alexander Technique teachers.
he didn't seem to think there were. I mean,
An Aikido master, perhaps, for instance.
he probably
I'm just
said,
making it up, but
yeah.
that's my role
Who
is to
who
be the devil's
knows? Who
advocate.
knows?
Yeah.
I don't think.
He might not have thought that, but I am of the opinion there are
Okay, yeah,
other
yeah.
people who
Maybe
display extremely good use.
someone who was really serious about this, but living not in London,
Mhm.
might think, well, can't get to London, but maybe what I should do is look around at people and see if there's anyone that seems to be moving well and hang out with them or study with them. Oh, maybe. But
Anyway, I'm
I
taking us
don't
off
think
track.
Alexander had that in mind, but who
No. Mhm.
um so one of the things that you would encounter with one of these half dozen or dozen teachers is they would teach you the orders of how to arrange yourself. 5 orders, maybe. Um, I don't know them all offhand.
The original
Neck, go forward,
direction.
up, back to lengthen and widen. There's a couple more. And you were trained to think them first. He would start with one. You'd start with one, and once you got that, you'd have to add another, and then another, and then another, and then another. And as he says, a lot of people have trouble with that. And then he'd say, well, all together, one after another. Now, my question to you is, did at any time in your training were you asked to do that, to actually know that sequence and project all those at the same time?
Well, we went through them. I don't know if it was quite
Oh, but he says you got to do them all
yeah, hang on.
simultaneously.
Technically, head goes forward, not to back to lengthen and widen. And they were the main three. But then
Yeah,
it'd be knees forward and
yeah.
away.
You could have
There's
different
something there's
styles. Yeah,
elbows. Um,
right.
um,
Because we had them, we knew about
yeah.
them, but I don't
But we
remember.
weren't sort of drilled on that we.
But he says that you really got to be able to do them all at the same time. He's very insistent on that. No one ever asked me to do that. I couldn't do that today. And I think, and he complains of, yeah,
Well, my thought is if you use one of them and you're using it in a way that's appropriate, we've discussed otherwise that there might be challenges with these directions, but say you've really got it and understood what it's about and you're not doing it, you're just
yeah.
thinking it. I think if you've just got one, it'll do everything.
Well, I want to that's very close to what I want to talk about here because, as he said, he says people tell him, they'll tell him, I can't think that about that many things at one time. And um, he, he, and yeah, and he says, I just, here's what he says, as the student expresses it, I cannot think of so many things at once. And he says, he's missing the point. He says this student has been going through life doing things, many things at once, subconsciously in all his life. People stand up from a chair, walk across the room, complex activities, and he's been doing that. And now he's complaining he can't have five thoughts consciously in his mind. I think the first big criticism of FM, if you want to call it that, is he had no idea how our mind and works, how our prefrontal cortex interacts with the rest of our nervous system.
Mhm.
So when he says, well, you can't complain about these five, you stand up, you walk around, you go swimming, you do
Yeah,
all
but
these
you've
things that
learned
are
those
very
pathways. You
complex.
don't have to be thinking them, do you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He he slips. I think he kind of gives himself away with this sentence because clearly we can do very complex things but not because of our prefrontal cortex, our conscious mind, but because our conscious mind can put out a suggestion about what it wants, like let's go for a walk. But the conscious mind is not going to do the walking. It's going to be totally outsourced to everything else. And he did not, I don't think he understood that.
Yeah, and I'm now thinking more about the kind of the orders and the thinking them all in order, but then all at the same time. I would think over time, if your brain understood it, you could just think the first one and subconsciously the whole sequence just, is there, right?
Yeah. And that just takes me to the second major point, which is not that different from what you just said, but I think a little bit different in that these orders, that's what he called them,
I
not
know.
actions, are really separating various parts of us. Neck free, head to go forward and up, back to lengthen and widen, when they're all part of an overall pattern. which is something that he's very big on in general. That
Which is why it's all at the same time. But yeah.
but he's very big on everything in everything in us affects everything else.
Hmm.
It's a strong belief of his,
Hmm.
but he seems to have forgotten that. I don't know. Um, but instead of having these five um, orders,
Hmm.
why not just have one direction? I mean, just an obvious one would be I'm not compressing myself. And that takes care of everything. And that's how we're designed to function. So I think Alexander didn't get that and made that mistake of separating when really we're unified. I think that that was 1923. 10 years later, when he had started a training course and had one of his students, George Trevelyan, interviewed him for quite a bit. And one of the things Alexander says to him is, none of my students believe that all they have to do is think the direction, and that will do the trick. They're all slaves to muscles, their muscles. Seems like maybe by 1933 he had figured out that it was just all you needed was one direction. And the only problem left is you wanted to make sure that one direction was just a pure thought and not helping it a little bit. And that's all of the second generation teachers all address that issue.
Yes.
People don't believe they all have slightly different
It's all about not doing the
yeah,
not
they had
not.
different takes on Marjorie Barlow, Marjorie Barstow, for that matter,
Hmm.
Walter Carrington. They all talk about this issue, and they're all talking about it in the context of a direction, not multiple strands.
Hmm.
So I think maybe he learned and got better, and so that's the improving our use to deal with concentration section. Do you have
So,
anything you want to add to that?
well, we've talked about what his kind of prescription for improving your use was,
Yeah,
which was the orders or the directions and not doing them, but having it all happen at the same time.
right, right.
Um, uh, but we haven't talked about, do you do you agree with FM that when we address our use, the downside, the issues, the problems with concentration inevitably disappear?
I can't say inevitably, but I think quite often.
I agree quite often, but
Quite often, yeah. Now there are some people who are so much a slave to random thoughts
Mhm.
that it might take a long time for that aspect of things. They might get better, they might have better use in terms of their breathing or movements, or if they're a musician or something they're playing, but they may still have some of that chatter going on. And it might take a long time. I knew such a person who was very, very intelligent studying with Marge Barstow, and Marge gave up on giving her anything to think about because it didn't matter what she would just go off in a different direction right away. So Marge confined her work to just giving her little hands-on. And eventually that student became my student. And about 2 or 3 years in, she had in fact mastered it.
Ah, interesting.
But it took a long time. And she, as I say, very intelligent, but and with something new like the Alexander technique, she just couldn't stay there.
Mm. I mean, I'm thinking out loud that there are many factors, and just different people have their own um, patterns and personalities around thinking. But we also know now there's all different, like the autism spectrum and
Right.
ADHD. There's all sorts
Right. That's a good
of
point.
diverse ways in which human beings
Neurodiversity.
work. You know,
Neurodiversity. I don't think
and
Alexander was thinking about
Well, no, and
autism.
it wasn't known and understood in the
Yeah.
same way then. And I'm thinking improved use, whatever the method of getting there, whether it's more touch, hands-on related, or whether it's more employing your own thinking.
Mhm.
I would have thought it's going to be helpful to people, whatever their own
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
situation, or
if you
and
go
I'm
to
not even saying that we need to change some of those things. That's I don't want it to be, but if you have trouble focusing on something,
yeah,
um that there might be something, if you're not pulling down and tightening,
right, right.
that's going to be helpful. Anyway, just a
I
few
think, but
thoughts
I
that
think in general, people don't come for Alexander teachers because they're concerned about concentrating.
no,
Yeah,
but it can be
it can
a
definitely. Yeah.
byproduct. But people will they'll take up things like meditation, perhaps, do mindfulness training. And I think Alexander technique is, in one way, a
It's
mindfulness practice. It's got,
absolutely it's mindfulness practice. I
yeah,
think so
yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so
All
that's
right, I just wanted to
yeah,
bring
no,
that there's
that's
all sorts of ways that the human race uses
yeah,
brains.
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So that takes care of that little issue. So
Okay.
anything else you want to add, or
I
should,
think I've said enough for this
okay, we're
one.
gonna go. We're gonna go on to uh, another in a separate in our next interview. So my guest has been Imogen Ragone. My name's Robert Rickover, and there are two more short podcasts coming up. Okay.